I would like to welcome everyone. We're really excited today to launch our AppBuilder software. So this is the official launch webinar. We'll be talking about our AppBuilder software as well as how it's going to improve your workflow, as well as the new model instrument or the model interface, and we'll talk about how that is going to improve workflows and allow you to build even better models than you have been previously. So before we get started, what we're going to do is we're going to go over some introductions and some housekeeping, and then we will move right into the meat and potatoes. I'll go over some overview of AppBuilder, and then we'll go into a live demo. So Susie Truitt today is our webinar moderator. She's our distributor manager here at Felix Instruments. She's been with the company for 10 years now. And we're really excited to have Susie be helping us today on the webinar. She'll be posting relevant links in the chat function, and she'll also be assisting with any sort of technical issues people might be having with the webinar. So as I mentioned already, Susie will be posting relevant links in the chat. But if you have questions about anything that is pertaining to the content of this webinar, then please use the Q&A function, because we will have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar where you will actually be able to ask those questions, and I will be able to actually see them and address them. So in order to do that, I need to utilize the Q&A function. So please, if you have a question that's relating to something about the webinar as far as content or pricing or something like that, please use the Q&A function and leave the chat box for only things such as technical difficulties. So if for some reason my video cuts out or my audio cuts out, please, in that case, let us know in the chat so we can address that before continuing on. And before we get started, my name is Galen. I'm an application scientist here at Felix Instruments. I have a bachelor's degree in biochemistry and a master's degree in food science from Michigan State University. I'm an IFT certified food scientist, and previously I managed an analytical food testing laboratory, and as well as worked as a food safety consultant. So as I kind of already laid out, it's a really brief agenda today. We already went over introductions. I'll talk a little bit about the company. We'll go right into AppBuilder overview. So I will talk about all the features of AppBuilder, talk about all the improvements we've made over our previous generation of instruments. And then we will go right into a live demonstration where I will go over as many of the features as possible in a short amount of time in AppBuilder. And then we will go from there, and I'll actually show you a preview of the new F750 user interface with the new firmware. And then from there, we'll go into a Q&A session where you guys can ask whatever questions you might have about what I just showed you. So Felix Instruments, if you are unfamiliar with us, we were founded about 9 years ago now, and we take 30 years of experience creating plant research instrumentation from our other company, CID Bioscience, and we use that expertise and that knowledge in order to create tools that are more geared towards the agricultural industry. And so the instruments that we make are non-destructive measurement tools that will allow for greater data transparency and data collection that will then result in a more consistent and higher quality product from commercial agricultural producers. And then our instruments are known for their ability to produce instant and accurate results. They are very durable, field-ready, portable instruments, and we do pride ourselves on data transparency, so the user always has access to all of the raw data that is collected from the instrument. And our products, we are also very proud of the fact that everything that we do, everything we engineer, test, manufacture, all happens in this same roof in our headquarters in Camas, Washington, where I am at right now. So let's dive right into AppBuilder. This is what we're here for. This is the launch of our new AppBuilder software. So what is AppBuilder? AppBuilder is a software that is compatible with our new generation of instruments. And what it is a model building software similar to our old model builder software. However, there's a lot of new features built into it. And so now the what we call apps that are built with the instrument can contain multiple models, and those get deployed onto an instrument, and the instrument actually runs an app similar to a phone would run an application. So there's a lot more possibility for customization on the user's end. And so we're really excited about that feature. AppBuilder is compatible with our full line of spectrometer-based instruments across Felix Instruments and CID Bioscience. So our F750, our F751, and our CI710 SpectraView spectrometer instruments all will be utilizing AppBuilder. And then we also have an upcoming instrument, the F760 liquid spectrometer, which will also be utilizing AppBuilder. So this is going to be a cross-functional software, so it's not going to be required to have unique softwares for each actual instrument. Then we also have, actually give me 1 second, could whoever else is hosting the webinar please mute your microphone? Thank you. So the other features that I want to discuss are the improved workflow. So with the instrument and AppBuilder, the new firmware and the new software combined, we have a new intuitive and customizable instrument interface. There is improved data organization with the instrument. It's more intuitive of the way you can organize your data. It's a lot simpler to organize your data directly on the instrument. There's also, with the software, it is now a lot easier to just rapidly import data and analyze that data and build new models. And the apps can now be customized using our low-code advanced tab, which I will demonstrate to you later on. Or you can also edit directly using VS Code if you have software coding experience. And so that allows you to have complete control over whatever you want your app to do. So it can be integrated directly into any kind of enterprise solution or whatever your current workflow is, which we're very excited about. The other feature which we are, as a scientist, I am most excited about is the ability now to create both PLS or artificial neural network models. So now we can actually have full control over deciding whether or not we want to, which chemometric technique we want to use. You also have full control, and it's really easy to switch between different wavelengths that are, whatever wavelengths you want to utilize in the model. You can change your principal components, the number of neurons in an AND model, or the decay value in an AND model, all with an easy drop-down menu, which I will show you later. And then the last thing that we want to talk about with AppBuilder is that, as with all of our instruments, our new 750 software and AppBuilder allow for complete accessibility to all data collected by the instrument. So this data doesn't necessarily need to be, that is collected with the F750, doesn't necessarily need to be assessed in AppBuilder. It is a free software that we provide for you. So if you want to use a alternative software like MATLAB or Unscrambler or any other chemometric analysis software, you are more than welcome to, and you can easily do that because you have full ownership of your data. So now that I've talked enough about AppBuilder, really the most important thing for me to do is to show you AppBuilder and to demonstrate it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to stop sharing this screen, and I will start sharing a new screen for you. And let me go to AppBuilder here. So this is AppBuilder. This is the version that is available for everyone to download right now on our website. And this is the welcome screen. And here on the welcome screen, there's a number of things you can do directly right off the bat. You can see there's some information about what the apps can do and what, how we define chemometric models. Interestingly to note, we do have this shortcut menu on the left side now, which allows you to really rapidly open recent projects, which is very convenient. If you've been working on a lot of different projects, you can easily open and switch between them. There are some links for tutorials as well as shortcuts here that are for creating a blank app or opening an app from a folder. So these two shortcuts mimic the same thing as going to File, New Project, or Open Project. Also, right away from the welcome screen, this is how you will update your firmware of your instrument. You will go to the Tools tab of AppBuilder, and there is a firmware tool here that will allow you to update your firmware. It'll give you on-screen instructions. It takes less than 5 minutes. It's a very straightforward process. So let's say, for instance, I've already collected some Spectra with my 750, and now what I want to do is create an application. So I actually have already done that, and so I want to create a blank app because I'm starting from scratch. So I'm going to click Create a Blank App, and now you'll be presented with this screen. This is the meat and potatoes of AppBuilder. So from this project tab, you'll see there's a couple of options. Right now we have, already off the bat, the name is highlighted. This is just going to be the name of the application, so I can just call it Demo App. Here, actually, the notes section, this is a really important section because this can carry all of the information regarding the dates where you collected data, the cultivars of fruit, the temperatures at which you collected the data, the maturities of the fruit, the researchers that were actually working to collect the data, the technicians' names, all that kind of traceability information you can put inside these notes, so you can make sure that whoever else uses this app knows exactly all that information. So that's a great feature, and we're excited that that is now kind of traceable with the apps, no matter where that app is sent to. So the other feature on here, which we'll actually come back to, is the Create App. This is kind of the final step of the app building process. So what we're going to do is actually go over to Chemometrics Models, and this is where the app building and model building really happens. And so this is the menu where you will import data, you'll adjust the parameters of your model, you'll actually see the graphs of your model performance, you'll actually do the model building or test validation data against the model. All that happens within this Chemometrics Models tab. So the first thing to do is import data. And what you'll see is that there's an option here for import. You click that, and there are 3 different options now. I'll get rid of that. So there are 3 different options now: measurements, training set, and text file. Measurements actually has 2 sub options. You can either choose a file or a folder. If you have any familiarity with Model Builder, what we have done in the past is that you import the .dat files that are created by the F750, and those contain all the spectra. So now what we've done is I'll actually allow you to choose an entire folder, and the folder can contain as many subfolders as you want it to. This feature allows you to, if you organize your data in a very specific way on your Windows Explorer, your File Explorer on your PC, then all you have to do is upload the overarching folder, the main folder that contains all the other folders, and it'll upload everything in the exact sequence it is in the File Explorer. And so you don't have to go through and individually select whole lists of DAT files or anything like that. So it's a really great feature, a really good time-saving feature if you already organize your data in a specific way on your desktop. Importing the training set, this is a feature that will be useful once we have a full compatibility with our previous instruments. So training sets were a method that were utilized by our first generation instruments that allowed for an easy collection of an organized set of data that was going to be used for the actual calibration. And so now we do have the option to upload those types of files. They're a .ts file from the instrument. And then the last and one of the coolest features now is the text file import feature. And let me actually show you really quick, just a quick demonstration of what this would look like. I have exported this is actually a CSV file from that I exported directly from a Model Builder model. And so what I'm doing is I'm basically uploading all the spectra and all the reference values from this text file and putting that into AppBuilder, and then I will then create an app with this data, and I will have successfully transferred a Model Builder model over to AppBuilder. And so what this import feature, this text file import feature does is allow you to just check all your information, make sure that you import exactly what you want to import. So in this case, I have this checkbox check saying that the first row contains column names, because the first row of this CSV does contain the names of what each of the columns are. In the case of if you had these the rows and columns in a different, if you had the spectra in row form and you had all these other things in column form, you could transpose it so it actually would flip it automatically for you. And you can also choose to only import a certain range of rows. If I click next, it'll actually then prompt me to say inquiring what is the actual reference value that we're going to be importing. And so I can choose from the list of columns here. So these are all the column headers of that CSV. And I know that the bricks is what I want to import. So I just choose that. The spectra, it automatically detected the wavelength range. So what you would do is if your row or if your column only has one column and it's multiple spectra within one column, like everything's delineated by maybe commas, you would choose single column. But in the case of this CSV file, each wavelength had its own column. So I'm doing a column range. And now it's actually very important to note that if this, you need to make sure that this column range matches the range that is already set within AppBuilder. So if you wanted a specific range before you import this data, you actually want to go in and adjust that, which I will show you here in a second how to do. But you'll actually want to adjust that within AppBuilder first, then import the data, and then choose that same wavelength range. So this wavelength range needs to match the wavelength range that is already set in AppBuilder in order for this import feature to work. So if I click next, I can actually see it'll automatically grab that specimen column for me. If you already have numbers, so this specimen number is an arbitrary number, and it just basically numbers your imported files one at a time. And so if you already have that number in your spreadsheet, you can just import it from the file, or you can set it to a fixed value and have it auto increment. So I will import it from the file. Here's where you can change the color of the graph if you wanted to. You could change the color of the actual points that are going to be within the graph once you train the model. But I'm not going to change that. I'll just leave it black for now. You can also import the date directly from the CSV if you have that date already in there, or you can just set it to a fixed value. So we'll just leave it at that fixed value. And then with the device ID, the same thing. This is actually a great spot to make sure you identify where this data came from. So for instance, I would put something like 750-018, if my, let's just give an example number here. This is my serial number for my instrument. The lot, so this is where you can actually put the information. It might be already in the CSV where you put that kind of organizational structure in there, or you can type it in manually. Same with the tags. The tags allow for if you have columns of data such as cultivar, temperature, things like that, you would want to include those in the tag section. So you would want to make sure that each of those data files that you import has that metadata associated with it. And then I would click finish and it'll upload. I'm not actually going to click finish because I want to import some other data for you guys to show you how to build an app, but this is how you would go about uploading a CSV file. So let's say, so now I showed you that CSV import feature, but let's say I took scans with my instrument, I took my SD card out of my instrument, I put it into my computer, and I have the SD card now sitting there, and it's been identified by my computer. It has all of my data on it, and I want to actually import those DAT files. So I have already done this as an example, so I'm going to go ahead and choose a folder because I want to make this quick for me. I don't want to have to select individual DAT files. And so on my desktop, I actually have a copied SD card. The entire SD card contents were copied from a 750. So this is what it would look like. The root menu of your SD card would just look something like similar to this. And you would go into your apps folder, you would go into, for this purpose, I'm going to go into my demo app. This is where the data for this specific app is going to be housed within this folder. And you can see there's a data and a settings. And so I'm actually going to double click just to show you each bin each bin's worth of data would be stored here as a separate folder. So for instance, if I had multiple bins and I wanted to upload all of those, instead of clicking each one and doing select all, or holding down Control or Shift and selecting all of them that way, what I would just do is just go back to this data. I would just choose the data folder and click import, and it will upload all those folders within the data folder in that correct order. So that's a great feature. In this case, I only have one folder's worth of data, so I'm just going to click that folder, click import, and it'll present me with these options here. So this is actually really helpful to have this prompt ahead of time, because if you are importing a set of data that you want to actually use to train the model, then you want to make sure that you have this training box checked. If you don't want that training data also to be tested or validated against the model, you can uncheck this box. If you are inputting data that is only validation data that is not to be used in the training set, you can import it and deselect training, and then it won't be automatically built into your model. We also have this specimen number auto increment. This will automatically adjust. So say I already had 20 data points already imported. If I went and clicked import again, this would automatically be set to 21, and it would start auto incrementing from 21. Again, it's just an arbitrary number, but it does help with organization of data. And then lastly, we have the graph color. You can always change that as you import data sets. And it is nice. It is a nice feature to have when you go to import multiple data sets from different days or regions or cultivars, so that you can help differentiate them in the graph that shows model performance. So I'm going to click OK, and it'll import the Spectra from that bin of. So this is just a demo model that I built using a Teflon block, a series of Teflon blocks, and we'll see here. So this is all adjustable, and so this is what the data looks like when you import it. We've got multiple columns. We've got the created date. You've got the specimen ID. This is that running number. It's an arbitrary number, but it still helps with organization of the data. Your device ID will automatically import. If it's a Generation 2 instrument, then your device ID will automatically import, as well as the lot. So you can see this is all bin 1, but I've got records 1 through 15. In the tags folder, because I had no tags associated, I didn't actually have any metadata associated with the these measurements. You can see there's no actual metadata, but it is still showing. If I auto size, I right click and auto size, you can see this is the actual file path. So you can see it's the file path from my desktop, this AppBuilder launch folder, to the SD card folder, all the way down to there. And then we have some example metadata tags. And then here is where we will input our reference values. This is where we will see the predicted values once we train and once we test the model. And here is where we can actually go and deselect and select training or versus test to our discretion. So for instance, I'm going to go ahead and desize this back down because we don't need it, so we can see here. For instance, let's say every third measurement I wanted to deselect from the training set. You could go and individually click these, or it works just like Excel, where you can actually do Control click and click every third one and deselect from the training set. And this gives you a validation set then, because these are going to be tested, but they're not going to be included in the training set. So you can do this in whatever way you think is best for your validation. Let me go ahead and just quickly input these reference values. These are arbitrary values, but they are related to the density of the Teflon block that I actually used for these measurements. So we should still get a usable model from this demonstration. And now you can see the graph, is histogram graph automatically built as I was typing in the reference values. And the train versus testing data is all represented. And what we'll do now is I'll actually go back up here and kind of explain some more of these menu structures. The graph color, as I mentioned, you could initially change it. Actually, you can change it as well whenever you want, just by highlighting and right-clicking and doing set graph color. So if I wanted to change this to each one to be a different color, I could do this, and we could actually see it'll look differentiated within the actual model performance graph. So I guess I'm already on a roll here, so let's just keep doing that. And then you can also see here, this is actually your spectral values. So these are all the spectral values that for each of these scans that are housed right here. So if I go back up to this, you can see I already showed you the import feature, the database feature. It uses Microsoft Access by default. If I clicked browse, it would pull up Microsoft Access, and it would actually show you all the information pertaining to your model, your spectra, all of your regression coefficients, things of that nature. You can all find within if you browse your database. There is the option to set up SQL Server or Azure SQL to use as a database. We have not yet encountered an issue with storage space. We do have some pretty big apps that we're building right now, and Access has still been a successful database for us to use, but there is that option if you so choose. The model button here. So this is actually a really useful feature, the duplicate model. So say, for instance, we're going to call this density. So this is the density model. Say, for instance, I wanted to have another model that utilizes the same exact spectra as this model, but just different reference values. So this comes up a lot when you're doing a model for the same commodity, but you want to analyze both dry matter and bricks, for instance. Then what you could just easily do is you could create your dry matter model from scratch, like we're doing now. But then for the bricks, you don't have to go and re-upload all that same spectra. All you have to do is click duplicate model, and it'll duplicate this entire model, and you can just go in and change the reference values to the bricks values, and then you have a second model without having to do all the extra data upload again, which is a very convenient feature. The next on this list of icons here is the setup, and this is the actual most important feature as far as how to customize your specific models within the app. So if I wanted to change between PLS and artificial neural network, I would go to setup type, and I could change between PLS and artificial neural network. If you click on the wavelengths, I don't know if that was a pretty quick movement. If you click on wavelengths, this is actually where you can change your wavelength range. So right now we're utilizing 729 to 975. So, and my bin size is 3. And so what a bin size is that right now what it's doing is it's doing pretty much a linear regression analysis on a grouping of 3 spectra. So starting at 729, we're including 729, 730, and 731 all together. We're going to do a linear regression on those. And then it provides a value for that spectra of those 3 wavelengths combined based on the linear regression, which then allows us to get a higher resolution and a better accuracy model than if we just utilized the raw data from each individual wavelength. This bin size, if you do want individual wavelength data, you can change it to 1. You can change it all the way up to 30 if you want to group large sets of wavelengths together, or large ranges of wavelengths together. You can do that. But in general, I leave it at 3, and whatever this bin size number is set to, you need to make sure that your range accommodates that. So you can't just say, if I wanted to make this 728, that's not going to work. And it'll tell you that because there is an extra single wavelength in there. So this is not a multiple of 3, this range. So you need to keep that at 729 to 975. But if you wanted to change it for instance, I want to change it to like 684 to 990. You can do that. Once you do that, it'll actually go and update the model and rebuild the spectra. So if you recall, there was that column on the right-hand side that showed all the raw spectra values. So initially it started at 729, now it starts at 684. So this is showing you the spectral values for the wavelength range of the model. And that is also where, as I mentioned earlier when I was doing the import text feature, that is where you will want to, this is what you need to adjust prior to importing that text file. This number, this range right here needs to match the range that's in that text file. So for PLS, when you have this drop down, right now we have PLS selected. Here's where you can adjust your principal components. This is where you can view your regression coefficients. So if, for instance, if you wanted to, because I haven't built a model yet, these are all 0, but if I wanted to import regression coefficients from a model built with MATLAB or Unscrambler, this is where you would import those regression coefficients. And then all you would have to do is upload the regression coefficients or copy and paste them into here, and then click OK. And then you would go into the intercept, set your intercept for your model. This can easily be done. Just, you can just change it by typing it in. And then you would click train. So this is the actual button that will build or train your model. So if I do that now, what's going to happen is it'll actually train this model that I currently have set up here. So let me go to the AND first to show you what the AND features are. So if I were to select AND as opposed to, which is artificial neural network, we call it AND, what you could do now is you can see these menus have changed. Things that you can alter are the neuron value and the decay value. So you can change the number of neurons from 5 to 10 or any number in between. The decay value, you can either choose to increase or decrease that value. You can and see how that influences your model performance. And so as of right now, it's not really an exact science. It really depends on your data set, whether or not AND is going to perform better than PLS, as well as what neurons and decay value are going to be best for your model. It's kind of a trial and error situation where, as opposed to there's not a recommended. You should, in general, for all models, you should use this neuron number and decay value because it's going to be different for every data set. So let's go back to, I'm going to actually build just a PLS model because that'll be, for this data set, this is a small data set, and 2, it's really straightforward. It's a Teflon block, so it's a very homogeneous product. There's no variety in this data set. There's no variation. So a PLS model is going to work just fine for this. So I'm actually going to click train, and this is what's going to build the model. And once the model's built, you'll actually see some new things have propagated. There will be prediction values now because it will have actually built the model and it can test those spectra now against the model and give you a predicted value. And there was also new graphs that will pop up. So as I just mentioned, you can see now there's predicted values for the models. You can see that each of these has a prediction. If I go to the Spectra tab, I can view the spectra of the model itself. And this is great because with the different densities, you can really see the difference between each of these groupings of 3. But the model performance line is what we're most interested in. And so if I were to readjust this, you can actually see your training and test results. So the test set, as you recall, I removed every 3rd measurement here, and I only used 2 of the triplicate measurements to build the model, and the 3rd one was reserved for validation. So the test is our validation data in this case. The training is our training set statistics, and so this shows you the RMSE and the R-squared. Obviously with this, because everything's so uniform, it's going to look great. Yeah, the R-squared is amazing because it's very uniform Teflon block, and the RMSE is also really good. So that's simply because we're not measuring any actual biological entity here. It's just inert plastic. So But this model performance chart can all these charts actually can be modified as well if you want to go in and you want to change the marker outline or the marker size. So if I change this to 10, you can see these dots got bigger for the training set. If I want to make them really small for the test set, I can bring it all the way down to 2. Now we've got really big dots for the training, really small for the test. If you want to only show training data or only show test data, so if I don't want to see any of the training data, now we only see test data. And you can also change the maximum records that are being shown within this graph as well. So once we have all this trained and everything's looks the way we want it, there's a couple of things we can do with this data. What we can do is we can export it. And what that would do is would give you a text file that gives you, or a CSV that gives you all this information that's within this table. You would, including your prediction values and everything. So that'll all be within that exported data. What you can also do is then, what you want to do is save this project, and then if you have more data you want to add to it later to the training or the test or to validate against it, you can always import more data. And if you want to actually deploy this app onto your device, what you would do, and I already mentioned this when I first started the project, is that you would go to this create app function. And so create app, what it actually does is it prompts you to either, if you have your SD card already inserted into your computer, you can actually deploy this app directly from your computer onto the SD card and not have to worry about anything. If you want to also back it up manually to your computer, you can choose that option. And what it would do is just save the app directly to, it's a .app file, save it to wherever on your computer you want to store it. The other option is to publish results. And so this actually, so where the export data exports that big table, the publish results feature here easily exports all of the graphs for all the models. So what you would get is, instead of having to do something like a screenshot and cropping the photo of the graphs within here, all you have to do is go to publish results and it'll export all the model or all the graphs for all of the models. So if you, even if you had 4 or 5, 6 models within this application, then it would still export all that data. So that's another great feature, actually, now that I mention it. If you are familiar with Model Builder, you know that you are limited to only a couple models or a couple of analytes per model. And so now we've kind of eliminated that. Also with Model Builder, you were limited to about 3,000 spectra per model. And after that, things started to slow down and not really work. So now I personally have built models within AppBuilder now that have, tens of thousands of spectra. I have one that's about 20,000 spectra, and it's working just fine. And I have multiple, and that's only one of the 3 models within that application. So it's now kind of a lot more of an open feature where you can, and especially because you can utilize different databases, there's no limit anymore to how many models and how many spectra within those models you want to include, which is great. So that's the Chemometrics model tab. Now we have 2 other tabs left here. For right now, actually, the device options, this tab is grayed out because we are still in development of this feature. So for now, that's just kind of a grayed out. You can't really do anything with this tab quite yet. But for the advanced tab, this is where we have all of the code for the entire AppBuilder software. So this is what we mean by data transparency and open code and low code software, is that any user can come in and actually edit any of the code within this application to make it do what they want it to do. So if you are an experienced coder and you want to actually go into VS Visual Studio Code, or you have a different code editor or text editor that you want to use to edit the code, you can also click the browse button and it'll take you to the location where all the code is kept. Or you can just use the actual in-window compiler that you see here. We have a lot of annotation for our code within here, so that you can see there's a lot of instructions about what each part of the code does. This describes the way the lots should increment. So if you want to change your incrementation logic, you can actually change that right here. If you don't want it to be called bin, if you want it to be called lot, if you want it to be, instead of a record, if you want it to be called something else, you can change that right here just by typing that in. It's great for customizing, this app that you're going to be using to be exactly what your workflow needs. And so all that stuff is editable. You can, it's all open access, so you have free reign to do what you want with your app builder and your apps, which is one of the greatest features, and it's not a very common feature for software like this. So we're really, really proud of that. If you do want to compile, make sure that if you edit things in this advanced tab window and you want to compile things to make sure that everything compiled fine, you can just click the compile button, and this window down here will actually let you know that everything compiled just fine. So that is AppBuilder. In a nutshell, we have videos, other tutorial videos explaining things. I do we have a walkthrough of how to create an app, things of that nature. So if you do need more assistance with it, please consult the tutorial videos, as well as the manual has a pretty in-depth run through of AppBuilder as well. And this video recording will also be available for any further review if you need it. So what we're going to do now is actually shift focus over to and I'm going to exit out of this, and here's a great feature. Make sure you save it before you exit out, but I don't need to save this one. Go ahead. Continue. I'm going to share a new screen with everyone, and that is actually going to be our F750 Generation 2 instrument. So this is a new F750. I'm going to go ahead and power it on. This is one of the Teflon blocks that I used for that model building exercise. And so the startup screen, as you can see, looks very similar to as it did previously. It's a ready screen. If I click the right arrow, there is an option for loading the application. I'm going to click right, and then our list of applications on the device is right here. I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate the Avocado app. So this is one of our newest apps that utilize the neural network technology. So if I click the right arrow, it'll load that app. I've already pre-taken some measurements to save us some time here. So this is what the screen would look like after taking some measurements. And there's a lot of data now on the screen that's available for users to actually get more insights. And the number one thing that you'll see is that this large number is actually representative of the average dry matter of this entire bin. So what that means is that the more fruit you scan, so if I had 6 fruit within this bin, this number is actually going to update to be the average of what all of the predictions were for the fruit, for all the scans of the fruit within that bin so far. So all 6 of those fruit are going to be included in this average. We also now have a standard deviation marker, which is unit, which is great for allowing to seeing things like tolerances. So if you have a set tolerance you want to adhere to, then this is a great feature to have. All the smaller data on the left-hand side, there is representative of different sides of the fruit, and then also the average of the singular fruit. So what these boxes represent, this top, for instance, this top measurement here is the dorsal side of the avocado. And so this is I scanned, if I scanned the dorsal side of the avocado, it would give me this average of 3 measurements. So I have it set to automatically take 3 scans with a single click of the button. So I click the button once, and it'll scan three measurements in a row, and it'll average those, which is this number right here, and it'll also give you the standard deviation, which is that number right there. Same with the ventral side. So this is a 2-sided measurement. I took a measurement of the dorsal. It took automatically took 3 measurements. There's the ventral side. It automatically took 3 measurements, and it has the average and the standard deviation. And then down here, once I was done taking scans of both sides, it actually filled in a block for the fruit. And so right now I have it set to 10 fruit per bin. So there's 10 blocks. So each time I scan a fruit, a new block will actually get filled in. And it'll give me the average for that fruit right here. And so for instance, if I was going to take the next scan of the next fruit, so I'm done with this fruit and I want to take the next scan of the dorsal side of avocado number 2, let's say, I click the button. And what we're going to see is it's going to automatically go through those 3 scans. So it'll take the amount of time it would normally take for 1 scan, it'll be triple that length, but I won't have to click the button 3 times. And you'll see that represented, you'll see the lamp light up 3 separate times here. And what it'll give us is that average. And so the advantage of doing this is that you get more accurate predictions because you're averaging multiple scans. And then the idea of scanning 2 sides, again, is making sure you have an accurate average for that entire fruit. And so now we have 2 blocks filled in, which means our second fruit is in process. We have the 3 blocks for the dorsal side, and then we have no data yet for the ventral side. Obviously, this is scanning super high. It's a Teflon block, and so it's saying that the dry matter is in the 60-some% range, because that makes sense, because there's it's not an avocado, and so it doesn't know how to handle these spectra that are being thrown at it. But from this menu, this is the main measurement screen. There's a lot you can do to customize your experience with this interface. So if I click the right arrow, it'll take me to measurement options, browse measurements, or device setup. So I want to go to measurement options. And from here, we have a couple of different options. And so the very first thing you'll see is archive measurements. The way we've developed this new system, this new generation of instruments, is that every time you are done taking or collecting data, the user should be archiving their measurements. And this feature will allow people to archive measurements directly to the SD card. It could be programmed to send data directly to a data server or directly across Wi-Fi to fruit maps. So it's really a great feature, and it helps keep data organized. So at the minimum, at the end of every day, just archive your measurements. It'll store them all in the same folder, so you know this day's measurements were in this specific folder. It's a very useful tool, and it's something that we think is going to help in general with organization and also helping to not overcrowd your SD card. You can see there's a default tags. You saw there was that tags column in AppBuilder. So this is actually where you can go and insert tags for the measurements that you're going to be taking. Default lot is exactly what it says. It defines what your default lot is. The bin options, this is what we're most excited about. If I click right on bin options, this is where you can change things like, as I mentioned, there was 10 fruit per bin. I can change this number to be 100 fruit per bin. And I click the right arrow and I'll save it. And when we go back to the measurement screen, you'll see what the changes were. There's also a fruit variance warning threshold. So as I mentioned, we have the standard deviation that is being automatically calculated now. So if you wanted to set a threshold that gave you a warning every time a new fruit average was more than, let's say, 5% different than the previous fruit or the average of the bin, what would happen is you would input 5 into this menu. So that's because you want a 5% dry matter difference is what you want to be warned about. And so then the next time you go to scan a fruit, if it gives you a more than 5% different average than the average of the bin, it'll actually pop up with a warning that says, this fruit is different than the other fruit. by at least 5%. So there might be, you either would want to, at that point, maybe scan a different fruit or re-scan that same fruit to make sure something didn't go wrong with your scan. And then at that point, you would want to make a decision to say, is this, is this a fruit that I want to include in this batch, in this sampling batch or not? So going even farther into that, the sides per fruit. So if I only wanted to scan one side of a fruit, that is possible. You can change it between 1 and 2 sides. Right now it's set default to 2 sides. We recommend doing 2 sides for avocado. But if for some reason you only wanted to do 1, that is possible. Same with the variance threshold for the sides. So between 2 sides, for instance, if I measured the dorsal side and it was 25% dry matter, and then I measured the ventral and it was 32%, I could have a warning set up with a certain threshold value that's actually would then indicate to me and prompt me before I could continue to say, do you want to rescan that? Do you want, is that something you want to, maybe there was something that went wrong during that scan? Do you want to just to make sure that that scan was correct? So that's a very useful tool to have. We can also change the minimum number of measurements per side, as well as the maximum measurements per side. So this is where I have it set to the value of 3. So you saw that did those 3 scans. So I have the minimum measurement set to 3. You might have it set default to 1, so you only take 1 scan per side. But as I mentioned, doing 3 sides is a more accurate way for us to assess the avocado dry matter. Maximum measurements, this actually defines that if you aren't meeting the variance threshold, then you actually can continue to take scans. But there's a certain limit that you might want to say, past this number of scans, then we want to start over and rescan the whole thing, because increasing the number of scans might increase accuracy, but if there was 1 bad scan in those 3 that really brought the average, changed the average and increased the standard deviation by a lot, you might not be able to bring that standard deviation back down just by adding additional scans. So that's what the maximum scan value is for. And then what I had selected as yes, I enabled for the auto repeat measurement, so I only had to click once and it would auto repeat those measurements. But if you want to disable that, and so you have to click the button every time, then you can obviously disable that feature. So that's the bin options. In our advanced options, this is where you can do things like change the bias of the model, things of that nature. You can access your data server if you are connected to Wi-Fi, and which will allow you to wirelessly upload your data every time you archive your measurements. So that's all within this the advanced options. And remember, I talked about the notes section within the app. So every app should have a notes section, and it'll actually be able to display on the instrument. So you can see directly on the instrument, wherever that app goes, those notes are going to go as well, which is great to have. So if I go back to our measurement screen here, now you can see that the boxes went away down here because I changed the number of fruit per bin to 100. Because obviously there's not enough room on the screen for 100 boxes. Now there's a progress bar. So the bar will fill up as the number of avocados I scan increases. This bar will slowly fill up. And so if I wanted to change the number of sides that I scan, this would only have 1 instead of 2. So it's a lot of customizability built in just to the instrument itself, let alone all the customization you can do within AppBuilder. So that's the quick and dirty run through of the F750 new user interface for the Generation 2 instruments. I'm going to go ahead and power that down, and we'll go back to our webinar here, presentation. All right. So now that I've showed you all of the great new features of AppBuilder and the new firmware, we need to talk a little bit about the compatibility of AppBuilder and the new firmware. So because we made such big strides in enhancing the technology over our previous generation of the 750 Produce Quality Meters, Right now, only units that are purchased were purchased since September of 2020, which is our Generation 2 instruments. Only those are currently compatible with this AppBuilder software and firmware. But there is good news. We will be releasing a patch here within the next month that will allow for backwards compatibility with a lot of the previous generation of 750 instruments. So if you have an instrument that's only a couple years old, you still will be able to use AppBuilder and firmware. We just have to build a patch for it with the firmware that will allow for those older instruments to utilize this new technology. And so that will be coming within the next month. And then additionally, if you own a legacy instrument, and so we're defining a legacy instrument as something that is purchased more than 3 years ago, then there is a slight possibility that you might need a hardware upgrade in order to be fully compatible with this new firmware and AppBuilder software. So if you own an instrument that was purchased more than 3 years ago and you are curious about updating to the new firmware and using AppBuilder, then please just reach out to our customer support, include the serial number of your instrument in that email, and we will actually, on a case-by-case basis, we will go through and assess what it's going to take to get your instrument up to the newest firmware and AppBuilder software, and then we will provide any information back about that. So please, if you have a question about that right now, please, I urge you, don't put that in the question and answer session because I won't be able to answer that question on the fly. If you want to know if your specific instruments can be upgraded, please contact our customer support with the serial number of your instrument. And like I said, if you have an instrument that is still relatively new, but was purchased prior to September of 2020, then just be patient. There is a patch coming that will allow you to be compatible with this new firmware and software here in the next month. And we will be sure to let everyone know when that is released. So if you do have a new instrument and you're curious about how to get make sure you're on the newest firmware and to get AppBuilder, the latest version of AppBuilder, all you have to do is go to our website and go to the Produce Quality Meter, SM50 Produce Quality Meter software page, which Susie is going to put in the chat, the link for that. And you just have to download the instructions, and then you'll want to download the latest software version, the demo apps, as well as the manual, and the instructions will tell you from there how to go about installing AppBuilder, installing the new firmware on your device, and putting the apps onto your instrument. The manual, as well as there are a series of tutorial videos that will be available to help you get familiarized with AppBuilder. And obviously, if you are struggling, if something's not working with your instrument, please contact our support team, and we will be happy to help make sure that you can get onto this new firmware. And lastly, we do want to give you a little bit of a teaser of what's coming soon, and something that I've been working really hard on for the last, for a while now actually, are some new kiwifruit apps for our 750 and 751 devices. And so these apps were built in AppBuilder. These are actual graphs on the right of models that I'm building with the AppBuilder. And so what we've done is incorporated multiple seasons, multiple regions, multiple cultivars. So actually we have 3 separate apps because we have 3 different cultivars that we're going to be releasing these apps for. And we actually utilize multiple instruments in the data collection. So because we're using the neural network modeling, that allows all this variability that we're incorporating to be accounted for, essentially. And so it really increases the probability that the model will transfer between devices a lot more smoothly than with a traditional PLS model. And there's a lot of other benefits of incorporating all this variability as well. And so we have these 3 new apps that we will be releasing here soon. One for Hayward that does dry matter and bricks measurements. For the Gold 3 kiwi fruits, it'll do dry matter, bricks, and internal hue. And for Red 19 kiwi fruit, it'll do dry matter, bricks, and internal hue as well. And if you are curious about how the neural network stuff as an improvement over the PLS, I really encourage you to check out our previous webinar, which we did with our two guest experts from Central Queensland University, Dr. Kerry Walsh and Nick Anderson. They are leaders in the field of the neural networking and chemometrics for post-harvest and harvest analysis of fruit. So it was a really insightful webinar to learn about how this neural network modeling works, if you want to learn more information about that. And lastly, feel free to get connected to us. We are always happy to chat. So if you want to give us a call, talk to our sales team, you can send an email. If you want to get connected to us on social media, we have a Twitter, we have a Facebook and a LinkedIn. Please feel free to always send us messages on those platforms. And as always, for the most up-to-date information, please visit us on our website at www.felixinstruments.com. And lastly, we will start with our question and answer session. And so if you would like to get a quote for the new next generation Gen 2 of our F750 produce quality meter, please click the link that Susie is going to post in the chat. You obviously cannot click the one that's in this presentation, but this exact URL will be in the chat. If you want to get more information or would like pricing information, then that is going to be what you want to do is click the link and it'll take you to a landing page where you will be able to get all that information. So thank you everyone for that, and let's go ahead and start the Q&A session. I will start with a question about, okay, so the first question is, what if the folder structure is more layered instead of having multiple bins to import the data? Will it automatically find the data to import when there are multiple layers of folders? Yes, Dorian, so absolutely. I actually have a series of, so even if you had one folder that then had 3 folders in it, and each of those 3 folders had 3 folders, and each of those 3 folders had 3 folders, you click that one folder, overarching folder, and you click import, it'll know exactly, it'll go all the way down to the very farthest end of the root, and it'll start with, and it'll order in exactly the right order that those menus are, or those folders are in. So, yeah, it's been one of the most helpful features of AppBuilder, in my opinion. For someone who's doing a lot of the model building stuff, it's been a very important feature for me. The next question is the bin size feature new, or was it present in the old model builder software? It is a new feature in the sense that it is now just a very easily accessible, easily changeable feature within the device itself. So that actually is pretty brand new. If you were a more advanced user of Model Builder, you probably could find a way to do that as well on the instrument. But it is a relatively new feature as far as ease of use of that feature. So thank you, Roy, for that question. The next question is, can I use Model Builder software with Spectra from a spectrometer of another company? And that is actually a great question. So as you saw with AppBuilder, the text import feature allows you to import a CSV that has spectral values in it. So technically, as long as you have a CSV that has spectral values in it, then yes, you could build models with it. But the only caveat of that is that in order to then deploy that model onto a device that is not a Felix Instruments device, there might be a little bit of modification that needs to be done, a couple of extra steps. So if this is something that you are hoping to do, I would actually ask that you reach out to us first, and we can maybe have a video call to see if this is something that is going to be possible for you. So the next question from Brenda is, will there still be support for the legacy instruments in the data viewer and Model Builder software? Yes, we'll always support, we'll always be supporting what we can. There will be no more new data viewer or Model Builder software is released, but there will be support for if you don't want to upgrade, or if you aren't able to upgrade because of some issue with funding or something like that, then we will still obviously support. And obviously a majority of the instruments out there are still Generation 1 instruments, and so we do still obviously support Generation 1. But I will encourage you to upgrade if you can, because this new stuff is opens up a whole new world of possibility with modeling. The next question is, when importing measurement data files, the software is getting stuck also with latest version. So if you're having an issue, then go ahead and please send a support ticket in through our website, and we will help you out with your issues directly. Thank you. Hi, we are interested in a non-invasive destructive instrument for total sugar levels measuring in agave plants directly from the field. What instrument and apps would you recommend us, and is there any possibility of testing it? Agave is going to be tough, mostly because of the form factor of the instrument. So actually, I would recommend checking out our potentially checking out our CI710S SpectraView, which is a leaf spectrometer. I just think the form factor of that might actually be more beneficial for the agave as opposed to the form factor of the F750. But feel free to reach out to us as well and to inquire to see what other suggestions we might have as well. The next question from Priscilla is, thanks for the presentation. How about very old NIR? Could I use data from FOSS NIR system 6500? I mean, as I mentioned, this is something that is totally possible. If you have a CSV file that has Spectra, you can still use that Spectra. Spectral values are spectral values, so you can use the software to build that model. The issue is going to be that the deploying that model back onto your instrument, onto your system, there's going to be some probably some barriers as far as trying to figure out how to integrate that specific app, the models within that app, onto your FOSS NIR system. But if you would like to do that, if you want, that's something you want to do, then like I said, please reach out to us and we will be happy to help you navigate that. The next question from Sebastian is, what is the purpose of the archived option? So the archive option is our solution for rapid organization of data, essentially, as well as being able to rapidly upload to not just the SD card, but to fruit maps if you wanted to, or a data server. So you could actually, and there's instructions for this in the user manual, if you wanted to use the tool to wirelessly upload a grouping of data. So after you took a day's worth of data, you can go ahead and wirelessly upload all that day's worth of data by archiving it, and the archive will automatically send it to your particular data server. It'll also store it on the SD card in a separate folder. So it really just, what it does is it wraps up all those DAT files that you just collected. So maybe you took 100. If you wanted to, every 100 scans, you're done with your bin. You want to archive that bin, or maybe it's just, I'm done for the day. I want to archive this day's worth of measurements. It'll wrap all those up into one folder and put it on the SD card so everything's clean. If you recall, on the legacy instruments, the Gen 1 instruments, when you take measurements, those DAT files were just stored in the root menu of the SD card, and they were just stored freely. So now this allows you to really rapidly package those into neat folders, as well as rapidly upload wirelessly to a data server if that's what you wanted to do, or to fruit maps. And like I said, there is more information about how to specifically do that in the manual. All right, the next question from Nazar is, hi, do you think it's possible to make a reliable model for potatoes? I do. I think that is a great application, and I think that I already have known of a couple people that have used NIR spectroscopy to build models for potatoes, and I think that if you want more information about how we think this application could work for you, then I would actually recommend you reach out to me directly, and me and you can discuss this application specifically. The next question from Dr. Asuna. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Asuna. Is it possible to get in the SM51 screen the actual true value of one particular fruit, not the mean and standard deviation? Yes. So if you need customization of your screen and you aren't particularly comfortable with doing any sort of low code or anything like that, then I can make sure that we address that and help you build that. So that we can support you and make sure that that's what you want on the screen. Also, if you do build or create a new app from scratch currently, this blank app will have exactly what you're asking. It'll just show the prediction without the standard deviation. It'll just show the prediction of that particular scan. And so that is an option as well if you want to go with that. It's less, it doesn't look as advanced as the current UI for the new apps does, but there are other options. So yeah, we can help make sure that you can access that if you want. The next question is from Carla. So the model that I suggested for the agave, I would actually maybe look into using the CI710S Spectra view. It's from our CID Bioscience side of the company. So if you, and that is a spectrometer, it's a leaf spectrometer, but the form factor of it, I think would be more appropriate for doing the agave testing because it actually utilizes a clamp on the top, so you can actually clamp the agave. It might be easier, but then again, I think that we might want to actually have a chat to see if make sure the instruments are going to be appropriate for your specific what you actually want to analyze. So let me go and actually check really quick in the chat.
It's from Pablo.
Okay, so there was a question in the chat
At 9:04.
Yep, I see it. Okay. So Pablo, could this meter be used to determine the content of vitamin C in the fruit? Vitamin C is going to be tougher to measure. Like the very small micronutrient content values are going to be a little bit tougher, mostly because of the actual quantity and the concentration. So if low concentration analytes are more difficult to assess with NIR. However, it is entirely possible to actually see vitamin C. So I think that it would require further testing to know if it'll actually be a solid quantitative model. It would have to be a pretty robust model, I believe, to be able to actually determine that quantitatively at that low of concentration. But I don't think it's an impossible task. All right, so it looks like that is all of our questions that we have for today. Yep. So we also will be sending a copy of this webinar. The recording of it will be sent to everyone that signed up for it. There are links that also will be sent for all the training videos as well. And then, as I mentioned on the software page of our F750, you can find the manual. If you have a Gen 2 instrument, you can update right now. You can update to the newest AppBuilder, the newest firmware, and there's instructions for that there. And if you do have questions about upgrading your instrument, then you will want to either email us directly at support@felixinstruments.com and send your serial number of your instrument to us. If you have a relatively new but not brand new, if you have a Gen 1 that was from 1 or 2 years ago, there is going to be a fix for it, or a patch for the firmware that will allow you to upgrade to the newest firmware and AppBuilder. It is coming, and we will announce that it'll be in the coming month. So just please be patient as that gets rolled out. So thank you everyone so much. We're really excited to be releasing all this new exciting technology for you. Thank you for sticking around for the question and answer session, and I hope you all have a great day and are staying safe and healthy.